All right, we are live, really live here, Tunnel Vision, presented by USCFootball.com. I'm your host for today, Ryan Abraham. Normally, Keely Ure is in this seat, so I'm sorry for the little snafu playing the theme song. Doing a little different setup today because Keely is Rehab Island still, so we hope she feels better soon and is going to be able to make a trip this weekend to Utah. We got a pinch hitter for Keely, Dan Weber, but he is still en route, so he'll be here hopefully soon. But we do have Shotgun Spratling, who made it just in time, even though he slept a little late. How you doing, Shotgun?
Wow, I was throwing all my dirty laundry out there. I see. I still made it in time. That's what happens when you stay up till 6 in the morning. But Keely's apparently got that illness that's been going around the team where it strikes one person a week. Well, there was nobody on the team this week that necessarily had it, so I guess Keely, is filling in with the illness. So in Clay Helton's post practice presser today, he might throw her in there. Well, we got one reporter out with illness as well. So don't want to go a week without having someone out with illness. So
no, you do
Keely's
not.
filling in.
So me and Shotgun are here. Dan should be here really any minute right now.
He's coming off the bench. What do you expect? He's got to warm up. He's got to get loose.
Give me the.
We sit him down in the bullpen. He wasn't expected to throw. We're going to extra innings here. We had to go to the bullpen early, like the Brewers did the other day. So a lot of relievers being used. He's got to get loose. So
yeah, he's never been to this office before, so hopefully he finds his way. I think he will, but we'll find out for sure. So what we're going to do today, we're going to preview obviously USC versus Utah. Any run game issues with USC? Didn't run the ball all that well. They had 0 rushing yards in the first half against Colorado, so we'll kind of talk about that. I know Shotgun got to talk to T. Martin a little bit, so we'll get some thoughts on that. And replacing Porter Gustin, that was the theme of Dan's story yesterday, practice report, so we'll talk about that. USC could be down 2 defensive captains for this one with Porter Gustin and Cam Smith, so we'll talk about the injury situation. And then, of course, your questions. We should be trimalcasting. I think we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and Periscope. Since I'm hosting, I'm not going to be able to monitor the Periscope questions today. So if you want to put questions in, you can watch us on Periscope. But if you want to put questions in, you're going to have to do it on Facebook or YouTube. So we'll try to do all that. But I don't know, Shotgun, what were your kind of thoughts so far this week in practice before we have Dan come in?
I think the most notable thing is the injuries. And, you're looking at the injuries, I think it was on Tuesday, I think there were 16 scholarship guys that were out or limited, with 13 of those being on the defensive side, including, I think, 5 potential starters or guys that had started a game this season. So that's huge. You're losing guys like Isaiah Polamalu for the year, Porter Gustin for the year. Those guys were guys that are in your starting lineup. Porter Gustin has been probably the most impactful player on the team this year, just looking at the difference between when he's on the field and when he's off the field. And you got Cam Smith, who's been your most consistent defender for 4 years now. He's still rehabbing on the hamstring. He did a little bit of work. Ryan posted a couple of videos of what he was doing yesterday. Still questionable. Asked yesterday about it, and about him and Palaie Naitiote, who had a really, really good game, kind of a breakout performance for him, starting in place of Cam Smith last game. And Clay said Thursday's going to be a pivotal day, which tells you they don't really know yet. They're going to see on Thursday how the guys feel and see if it's progressing towards them playing Saturday, or if they're taking a step back, or if they're not ready yet. So I think that it's a big concern. I don't feel like people are maybe even playing up as much as it should be how big of a concern this is. Now, because Ruben Peters came in and did a fine job against Colorado, but you do not want to have to rely on Ruben Peters to be your guy in the middle of defense when you're not going to get as much pass rush because Porter Gustin's out. So it's a defense that is hobbled a little bit right now, and you played 14 different safeties, it feels like, beside Marvell Tell, and even at the end of the game, and maybe this is why they did it, is because of how many injuries they've had, but at the end of the game, it was C.J. Pollard the entire second half of the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, Colorado ran 31 plays, not including penalties. So there was probably like 35 in there, taking away some of the defensive penalties. But that's a ton of plays. And USC gave some of the younger guys, Levi Jones was in there for a while in the fourth quarter, so he got some opportunities. So they gave some guys some opportunities to kind of showcase themselves, which might have been why Colorado scored a couple points in the fourth quarter. But you see that when the reserves go in, obviously they're starters for a reason, and the opponent usually plays a little bit better when the reserves are in. So if you're missing 4 or 5 guys like they've been missing the last couple of practices, then they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. If you look at the defensive, when they give us that chart, before each game, and there's like the roster, and they put little hashtags next to people designated with an injury, and all the injuries are on the defensive side of the ball, not on the offensive side of the ball. But it was the defense that played really well, which I thought was kind of interesting. Yeah,
the defense played well, and did as much as they could in that game. The offense did well for one quarter, and they scored 21 points in the second quarter and did really nothing else the rest of the game. They had one kind of drive in the fourth quarter. They got in the field goal, which was an important field goal, by the way, because it makes it a 3-score game rather than just a 2-score game, and you're forcing Colorado to have to get to recover a second onside kick. I mean, I rewatched the game last night to finish my charting, and I completely forgot that Colorado went for onside kick twice. And Levi Jones smothers the first one, and that was without their hands team out there. When they put the hands team out there, that's when they gave up the onside kick, which seems kind of backwards, but that seems to be USC special teams a lot of times. So, the game that fourth quarter lasted a long time, it felt like. In USC, I think they ran 25 plays in the second half. They didn't have the ball very long, and when they did have it, they did weird stuff like playing Randall Grimes and Devin Williams back-to-back series and not getting Michael Pittman on the field for over almost an hour of time in real time. Then you go 3 and out twice in a row. Well, maybe if you put your receiver that's got 155 receiving yards in the game, you might be able to pick up a first down or something. You might be able to throw that timing hitch route that you try to throw to Devin Williams that does not get completed. Still, I can't figure out why they won't just throw Devin Williams a receiver, bubble screen, whatever you want to call it. Just throw him a quick throw out wide, let him catch the ball, let him beat somebody. He's a physical, big dude. He's fast. He's going to make that first guy miss. Yeah. Just give him an opportunity to do that before you try to make him do all these timing routes, these deep balls.
Way down the field. He hasn't caught a pass yet. You got to give him, you give him the nice, easy one to start with, right? Let him break through and get a catch at some point. But they haven't done that yet. And they're always these low percentage, critical times in games kind of thing. And you're just wondering, why are they doing that?
And I think that tells you they have confidence in him, but an easy way to build someone's confidence in themselves as well is to give them that first easy one. They always talk about, we got to get the quarterback, get him a couple of quick easy throws and get him in a rhythm. You can do the same thing with a receiver. Get him a little confidence catching a quick ball, and then give him a blocker out in front if you have to, and let him have an opportunity to make a guy miss. I've been clamoring for that one for a while. Devin Williams is a big physical dude that is going to be really good at USC, but they're just not putting him in the best opportunities, I think, for him to be successful early in his career.
Yeah, there were some issues at practice yesterday, too. They were trying to get him balls, and whatever reason, it just wasn't working. So we talked about, the defense, I think, has played, extremely well, at least for the first 3 quarters of Colorado, even with all the injuries. I think when Dan comes back, we'll talk a little bit more. Hopefully he gets here pretty soon about the Port Augusta stuff. But the run game, you did a story on T. Martin and the run game issues, and it was kind of, I don't think the comments that T. Martin had were well received, I guess you could say, on the peristyle. I had a buddy text me, you should look at success rate, and I kind of checked that out. I need to do a little bit more research on that. But USC's success rate overall wasn't very good. He talked about, sometimes there's sacks, sometimes there's a negative play. Yeah, Stephen Carr had there was only 1 sack in the game, and Stephen Carr had that negative 11-yard run. But just in general, they didn't run it that much, and when they did, there just wasn't a whole lot of success. I wouldn't say the success rate was, it was well below average of what you would have for a typical USC run game. And I think you pointed out in your story, Colorado had a mediocre rush defense. It wasn't like they were, a stout rush defense like we see with Utah. Kind of get your thoughts on that with where USC's run game is and what T. Martin said to address it this week.
I mean, Colorado came in almost exactly at the halfway point of all teams. I think there's 129 teams. They were 64th. So that's as right in the middle as you can be, the median as possible. And they're okay against the rush. You could run against them, though. There were holes there. There were opportunities, looking back at it. And asked about his level of concern, T said, not much. How is there not a concern? Now, part of it is that when Colorado was loading the box, you want to throw out to the outside. That's true. And that's something that USC did, and that's something they were able to take advantage of. But they were not able to get a consistent flow with the run game at all. And that's been one of the biggest issues, to me, is similar to Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman has 155 yards receiving after the first play of the second, USC's first play of the second half. And he doesn't really get a pass thrown his way until late in the fourth quarter, or midway through the fourth quarter again. It's like, if a guy is going hot, continue to get in the ball. With the running backs, it's similar, because you look at how long they're off the field, and a guy like, Cedric Ware will have a couple of good runs, and it'll be 15 offensive plays before he's running again. So when you think about real time, well, that's a pretty good chunk of time, depending on if the opposing offense does anything, because they just can't. I don't feel like the running backs can get in a great flow with the way things are transpired. They're kind of doing one drive, and they'll give the next drive to the next guy, and they'll go, if it's a longer drive, they'll go a couple plays and put somebody in. But I think they kind of got to shrink that down to two guys. Now,
really?
I think it's just those guys aren't getting on the flow. Now it's not the running backs. The running backs are doing fine.
No, I wouldn't blame them at all. Like they're
but I think,
all three capable, I believe.
Yeah, and I think for them to be even better, I think if you trimmed it down to two, and maybe if you have a goal line package for, you have a certain package for Vi or whatever it may be, then you put that in. But Cedric Ware is actually the top in the Pac-12 of the primary ball carriers for teams. So anybody that has, I think, over 30 carries. He has the most yards per attempt, yards after contact per attempt. He's getting 4.4 yards on every play, every snap that he gets, every carry he gets, he's getting 4.4 yards after contact. Now, part of that tells you that he's getting a lot of contact early, because he's not getting hundreds of yards every game.
No.
It's
testament to how he runs, because he's not getting the blocking up front. He's still making yards.
Yeah, and I think he's doing a great job. The offensive line has not been good in the run game. They were much better in the pass game, the last game. But he asked T. Martin about it, and he has no issue. It's like there's no concern at all. How is there not much concern? Not much concern. Like, I feel like you should be like, yeah, we'd like to get that going more. It wasn't there, maybe this game. But it just seems the way he answered the question is like, and then Dan asked him later is, you go into halftime and you got 255 yards passing and 0 yards rushing. Do you feel like, hey, maybe we should just scrap the run game and focus on passing because of how well it's working? He's
Dan,
like, no,
Dan really wants that. Dan wants that.
Yeah, Dan wants that bad. And first, T latched on to the stats thing before Dan could finish his question. It's like, I don't look at the stats until the next day. Why would you not look at the stats?
Yeah, like if you
is that like a bad thing all of a sudden? Like, those will burn my hands. Don't look at those.
Because you get them, like they're there. We get them in the press box. They print them out. What's going on? Like if you might not know. Like, you ran the ball. What if you ran it, 60 times and you passed it once? You're like, you're going to know something like that. But just any kind of numbers, I think, could help you with the information and help you do your job a little bit better, because you don't have a lot of time at halftime, but you want to get as much data as possible so you can make adjustments going forward.
And you're looking at it and you're like, Cedric Ware is running for 7 yards a carry, and maybe it doesn't feel like that because he's avoiding contact in the backfield or he's getting big holes or whatever it may be. You don't have the same feel, but you look at it, wow, this guy's running pretty well. But T said, if I can find it real quick, he said that, we don't look at, the stats. We look at how we're running the ball. The negative plays sometimes in the run game can make you feel as if you weren't running the ball good. So if you look at the stats, you can be deceived and thinking the overall run game is not working when we're actually getting positive yards in the run game, but then a negative 12-yard run or a quarterback sack takes away your rushing numbers, so you think that you're not running the ball good. So I don't look at the rushing yards or the numbers as much as I look at what we did when we called this. Okay, 3, 4, 7 yards. Okay, let's get back to that. Quarterback sack doesn't mean that you're not running the ball good, but it comes off the rushing yards. So I don't look at that at the per se number. Yes, you gave up yards on a sack and you gave up yards on a negative play. It's still not indicative of how you're actually running the ball. You can look at the numbers, or you can actually look at how you're running the ball, and that's what I look at.
Huh.
Okay, that's fine. That's a perfectly fine if you're getting sacked 4 times and you're losing 50 yards off of it. But they had 1 sack for 7 yards. They had 1 negative run for, I think it was counted as 11 yards on the book, maybe 12. You're under 20 yards still. So that means you've ran the ball, you've called 10 runs, and you have you have 18 yards. You had 9 runs, you had 18 yards, taken away the big loss and the sack. That should still be of an issue. That shouldn't be like, well, we're still running the ball fine. We're running it for 2 yards a carry.
Yeah.
2 yards a carry is not good, and that's taking away your biggest losses. Now, the NFL considers sacks part of the passing yards. It's just part of the team passing yards. They don't take it away from the quarterback. That's probably how it should be done.
Yeah.
Because it's on a pass play. It shouldn't count as a rushing
It's a drop
yards.
back, yeah. I mean, you want it to count as a drop back. It's not a design run play or anything.
But that's just kind of giving him an excuse to say, that's the run game's not. There's no issues there because we had sacks. You had 1 sack. The offensive line did really well blocking passes, and the 1 sack was like a 3rd and 18 where JT's trying to hold on the ball a little while so he can get the ball down the field, and the pocket kind of collapsed on him. So that one. It's kind of a team sack. That's not necessarily on either side, the offensive line or on JT. But so I thought the offensive line did pretty well in pass protection. They're pretty good. JT had time. He got hit a couple of times on throws, but for the most part, with as much as they went deep, he was pretty untouched on a lot of that stuff. So, but looking at the run game, and you're just like, if you don't see an issue there, I don't know what. That's the problem I think most people have is. There should be concern.
There's an issue. Don't there wasn't really a big deal. You're exactly right. There needs to be some sort of concern.
Yeah, you can't come off the Arizona game like, well, we ran the ball against Arizona, so that means our running game's good.
Right.
You always run the ball against Arizona. Akaseja Ware loves Arizona. He has 100 yards rushing every time against Arizona. That doesn't mean your running game's going well.
Right.
Now, with this team, with as up and down as they are, they could come out and run for 200 yards against Utah.
Sure.
Would not expect it because that's been the one area where they've been pretty consistently bad in. But you never know with this team. There's so much talent on the team that if something starts clicking, and I mean, Chuma Edoga, when he gets out and blocks somebody, when he gets out in front of a play, he's like clearing a path that no one's going through. Now, sometimes he grabs somebody. Like the first one he got a holding call on, if you actually look back, is something that didn't get brought up. But USC went with basically the same play that they ran against Texas on the goal line. The 4th down play, they put Vi Malapai at fullback. They tossed the toss sweep out to the outside. Now this time Chuma was out there as your lead blocker instead of your guard, and you didn't have the confusion with Elijah Vera Tucker whether or not he was supposed to pull or not. So you get on the edge, and it was a great play. Chuma blocks the guy, and he just tried to do too much. Like, he had the guy blocked. Akaseja Ware's going around the outside, and then Chuma just wanted to throw him down to the ground. So he just did too much in that one. But that's the kind of thing. Like, Chuma, when he gets out on the edge, when he gets his hands on somebody, they're not going anywhere. He's really good when he gets his hands on somebody. Now, just getting him to get his hands on somebody sometimes is the issue.
In a legal way.
Yeah, in a legal way. But, they can get out and do some things like that. So they have talent. So those type of plays, maybe Utah is trying to clutter up the middle and they go inside, you throw a toss sweep, and it's a 20 or 40-yard gain real quick. And suddenly you got a lot of run yards in this game. That's completely possible because there's so much talent on this team. But it's putting that talent together that's been the issue.
Yeah. Interesting. So just to let you know, so we're still waiting on Dan, which he was supposed to be here about 15 minutes ago. I'm not sure. I'll check my phone when during Shotgun's next rant. We're getting a lot of comments. My little Facebook program that we would put up your comments, that's crashed already. I know it's been crashing for Keeley every once in a while, so I'm working on that, trying to fix that up. But I got it on my phone. But people are fired up about you, Shotgun. They said, we have George say, Shotgun's fired up, love it. If our staff was as animated about our team. If only our staff was as animated about our team. And Richard wants to know, what's the major difference between pass blocking and run blocking? It seems strange. We're decent at pass blocking and awful at run blocking. And to be fair, it was pretty awful at run blocking early on in the season too. They've got better at it, which is good. There was not
the pass blocking.
Yeah, the pass blocking. There's the four rushers, 7 blockers, and Stanford was getting to the quarterback. You're not seeing that anymore, so that's a good thing. But the run blocking seems that's a little bit more about attitude. I don't know what you think, Shotgun, but there's just not that physical, like you just want to go out and put your hat on somebody and push them away.
Yeah, run blocking is more attitude than pass blocking. Pass blocking is a lot of times more talent and communication. So the pass blocking, the things that were happening earlier in the season were a lot of communication errors. That's why you had free runners, going on the.
I asked Neil Callaway that specifically. He said, no, it's not communication. But what else could have been? I mean, if you have 2 guys blocking nobody, then yes, and someone coming free. You're not doing something right. it's not like they got pushed back or anything. They just weren't even in the right spot.
And a lot of times it was, different things like stunts, long stunts, where what Stanford did really well against them were long stunts where they're taking somebody from the outside and bringing them through the A gap. So the A gap is right where the center is. So they were bringing someone from the outside. And USC did this actually against Colorado. The very first play of the fourth quarter, they get a sack, a team sack, or maybe they gave it to Jordan Iosefa. Steven Montez could have thrown the ball away, but you saw how defeated he was in that play because he had a chance to throw the ball away. He's running towards the sideline, and he pump faked, and he was like, okay, there's nobody open. And he just carried it out of bounds for a 6-yard loss. And that tells you that, like, a quarterback can easily all he has to do is throw it over the line of scrimmage. So he has to throw it 6 yards in front of them to no one in particular, and it would have been an incomplete pass. Instead, he was defeated at that moment, and he just decided to run with the ball out of bounds. Whereas I think Joe Burrow had a similar play against Georgia, and he's like falling, getting hit, and he throws it, and it's an incomplete pass, and it changes complete dynamic of the play calling because instead of losing 6 or 8 yards, you are still 2nd and 10. 2nd and 10 is a lot different than 2nd and 16.
Yeah.
So you saw that USC did something similar, but what they did is they took Porter Gustin from the very outside and brought him to the middle, and the inside guy, on this case, I think it was Liam Jimmons, actually goes towards the outside. So you're basically switching spots with two people. Well, you can sometimes do that with two people. Stanford was doing it with the outside linebacker, and there was two down linemen inside. So USC was blocking these two linemen with 3 guys, and they weren't coming off. They weren't communicating enough to take the outside rusher, the outside linebacker, Joe Alfieri, did it a couple times, and he was coming free right through the middle. So it was either Andrew Voorhees or Toa Lomanon. There just wasn't the communication from the outside in to say, hey, this guy's coming, or whatever it may be. They just weren't getting that, what's the word I'm looking for?
I'm not sure.
The grouping was not working together. They weren't working as one. They were
being cohesive.
Cohesive. There it is. There's a word I'm
looking for. Okay.
I think that one works.
Try to figure it out.
Yeah, they weren't being cohesive. They weren't communicating together. It was 5 guys trying to block whoever's in front of them rather than a group of guys trying to block the pass rush of the other team. So I think that USC's done a lot better with that. When you're run blocking, it's more physical. It's get out in front and hit somebody. Now, USC's run blocking scheme is a zone blocking scheme. So a lot of times they're running to a spot and finding whoever's in that zone. It's not Toa Lobanon's looking and saying, okay, I got to get to that linebacker right there in particular. It's whoever's going to be in that spot. So it takes a little bit of flexibility. It takes a little bit of being able to decipher on the run who you're trying to block. So that can be sometimes can be an issue. Whereas a straight ahead blocking scheme, you're just basically you're getting whoever is right in front of you rather than trying to figure out exactly who's going to be in your zone when you're blocking it. And sometimes on a zone blocking, when a defense can slant the opposite way, and an offensive lineman is like, all right, I don't have to block anybody. And there's a big hole because no one came into the zone. The defense just ran away from where they're actually supposed to be. So that's kind of the difference between run blocking and pass blocking. It's more physical with the run blocking. It's more mental with the pass blocking. And obviously, you have to have talent to be able to keep defensive linemen and pass rushers in front of you. But it's more physical versus mental in that regard with those two.
We got Dan Weber here. Welcome,
Hey.
Dan.
Welcome.
How you doing? Thank you
Good.
for coming off the bench.
I think I'm in Redondo Beach, but I'm not sure where I'm parked.
Oh, was it parking out?
There is no parking, so
sorry
on
about
top of all the turns. But I did hear that's something I haven't heard much. The USC has a run blocking scheme. I'm getting excited now. I didn't realize that there was such a thing. But yeah, I mean,
Don't worry, Dan. It's not of much concern.
no, it's yeah. I mean, that gets to be the issue this week. I think is it really comes into focus is you're going against a team that can really play the run well, and you can't run the ball well. And what do you do about that? And do you make a commitment to go with your strength, to go with what you can do, or do you say we're going to stay balanced and we're going to play like we did in the second half against Colorado, and we're going to show we can really run the ball. We might not score,
Right.
and we might take all of our good athletes out of the game in terms of Michael Pittman not getting any targets and that kind of thing. But we'll say, hey, we can run the ball and score 3 points. So I think that's, I'm really intrigued as to what USC makes, what game plan USC decides to go with. Do they have what it takes to say, this is what we do well, and we're going to do it, and see if you can stop us, instead of the basic theory for Lane's years, for Sark's years, and now for Clay, who came up under them, is counterpunch. Let the other team determine what it is you're going to do on offense. Then you try to do it. As opposed to saying, here's who we are, here's what we do well, and you see if you can stop us. That's not been kind of USC's way to go. They kind of let the other team, and I don't know if I'd be really comfortable with always letting the other team decide how your offense is going to run.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing you have control of is your team and your practices. Why, say we're going to let you decide what we do this game? I mean, who does that?
Yeah, on the defensive side, I think USC kind of, they'll adjust and they'll play different fronts, more of a scheme like basically do, but they seem to just come out and do what they need to do. We're not seeing the same sort of thing on offense. But, to T. Martin's point when he was talking about it, if the passing game's working, you kind of want to go with that. I know that's something you'd like to see, but it seems like they're glossing over some of the bigger problems here. There's a lot of reasons the running game should be working, and it's not. And you're like, well, what is the point of this?
I mean, like last Saturday, you've got 255 passing yards at the halftime and 0 rushing yards. So your decision is you're going to come out and run the ball, right? I don't know. That seems like
I would take balance.
I would take a game
on the screen right now.
I'll be honest. I would take a game where you get, what is it? What would that be? 510 passing yards and 6 touchdowns. I think that'd be okay.
Yeah.
Who cares? But that's not kind of how USC thinks. And so they got kind of, tied up in a third quarter where they didn't get a couple of possessions. And they actually said the pick six worked against them because that was one time they didn't get a chance to run the offense. And so then they get into the fourth quarter and they're up 3 scores and they say, well, let's put it in the hopper and just not take any chances. And all of a sudden, boom, boom, and they're halfway in a game at the end, like always.
It's funny, the pick six you guys were talking about. I got to watch Max Brown, so he's been on our show, and obviously former USC quarterback. He broke down some of the plays in this game, and I don't know what the screen. It's kind of like a drag wide receiver screen or something. I'm not exactly sure what you call it. That's where, and they did that. It worked a couple times early, but Colorado, he counted 5 times that they ran this play and you saw like Peyton Manning do it with Wes Welker, and it's been very successful. Where like the wide receiver, 2 wide receivers on one side, 1 on the left, and the 2 on the right side, they're going to go out and block people. The guy on the left kind of just goes out and just drags across the field. He's catching the ball perpendicular to the direction you're going, and then he'll turn it upfield and usually make a big play. The pick six was one to Laviska Shenault, and one of the Colorado wide receivers took a really terrible angle on J.N.A. Harris, didn't block him, kind of ran to where he was as opposed to running where he was going to be. And USC by that time, they had been stopping it. They've kind of figured it out. They dropped more guys into coverage, and they weren't going to let a guy like that come across the screen and without have a hat on him. And in this case, there was 2, and one of them was a J.J. who didn't get blocked by the wide receiver. The ball's, not thrown exactly perfectly, and he picks it up and runs it in. But I thought that was, so unfortunately that dismantled the USC offense. Pick six happened, but it was cool. If you want to go check out Max Brown's thing, he broke down the play pretty well.
And I thought that was the most active we have seen a USC offense or defense play in years and years. I mean, there were guys flying everywhere. There were a couple of guys involved in that play. Ajene, kind of saw where it was going to go and got himself alert to when the ball's deflected. He's right there. He's right there for the pick. And I don't think we've seen that USC defense play like that in terms of, they really felt like they had Colorado figured out. Colorado stayed with their game plan no matter what. And USC just was so comfortable, but I just thought the urgency, they've talked about playing with urgency. I think that's the first time we've really seen that kind of urgency from the USC defense. Now, if you can figure out how to translate that into the offense, but that was a special effort, I thought, by the USC defense.
I think Colorado's game plan really played into that too, because it was a lot of short passes. It was inviting USC to attack, and then when you put guys in like Palier and Natiote, who is more an attack guy, like Cam Smith will, instead of a quarterback will be scrambling, and Cam Smith will wait 2 yards past the line of scrimmage, make sure the guy can't get the big run instead of attacking and trying to get a 5-yard sack. That's just more of his play style. He's gonna make sure that he is a fundamentally sound guy. He's not going to let any big plays happen. And if he stops you for 0 yards, then that's fine, rather than trying to go and attack and try to get the 5-yard stop. Whereas Natiote is going full speed at all times. The play to Laviska Shenault is another drag route that they ran across, and I think there were supposed to be blockers on the left side waiting for him. None of them even wanted to mess with Natiote. He drops back in his zone. He comes up and lays the big lick there that knocks kind of both of those guys out. Shenault stayed in for a little bit, but eventually left the game. But I think that you had more attacking guys in that regard, and Ajene is very active at that. He's going to attack on the outside when he has the opportunity. And those type of routes that they were running, it just invited that. Isaiah Langley did a really good job coming up a couple times. Iman Marshall as well. I think those guys on the outside were really attacking on the edges. And one of the things that they did better than they'd done any other game is that they rallied to the ball. There were times where they would miss that first tackle, but there was always another guy or two other guys there to make the tackle, which is something we haven't always seen from this defense.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing, they were convinced that Colorado was going to try to be run heavy first and second down with McMillan, and I was surprised they didn't run Shenault almost at all, but they really played first and second downs well. I thought the down linemen were really active. They've improved a lot, it looks like to me, in terms of their way that they can get pressure with 3 down guys, and so they didn't give Colorado much chance to have third and short, for example. No. So the routes they were running weren't going to get it done. They weren't that much different from running plays. And then when Steven Montez had to actually just flat out straight drop back, he hadn't obviously seen any kind of pressure like this all year. I mean, they got him off his spots. They hurried him up. Here was either he was the number 1 or number 2 most accurate passer in the country at 75% plus. And he didn't even remotely look like that guy because you got him speeded up. And that's where you come into a game like that. You're 5-0 and you're getting all kinds of votes in both polls, and who knows if you're any good or not. We tried to tell the Colorado fans that it was kind of a mismatch talent-wise, but they didn't want to believe it until they actually saw it. And that's the difference if you've got 52 4- and 5-star players on your roster, or you've got 6. I mean, the difference is the rest of those guys on that Colorado roster, they've got, a couple of really good players, but they were getting run by. People were just running by them. I mean, they just weren't much of a factor against USC's down lineman or against EA, who just absolutely is he's like a 250-pound Troy Polamalu. And we almost haven't seen somebody quite like him.
Yeah.
I guess the hope is we get to see him Saturday.
Yeah, I kind of think we will, but.
Well, I think he'll be healthy. I'm thinking, let's hope he's on the field.
Yes, I'm guessing he will. 7 of 23, Colorado was on third downs. I think 2 of 4 on fourth downs. But 23 third downs is a lot to face. They had 7 3-and-outs, which is kind of crazy. Of the 9 punts, 7 of them came 3-and-outs. So really good job by the USC defense. And Shotgun, you mentioned that play with Palier, that the drag route again. Max Brown broke that one down too. That's one where USC only rushed 3. Porter Gustin got a little bit of pressure. They dropped 8, so there was no way all of those guys could get blocked. So one of the receivers picked a block. I think it was John Houston next to Palier, but EA was wide open to make that play, and there was that huge play. So that was an interesting one.
This is one of the few games that you come out of it where USC just beat the heck out of the other team physically. I mean, Colorado, Laviska might not play this week. McMillan certainly wasn't in good shape. McIntyre, the receiver, I mean, they just that's kind of old-time USC football where people were a little afraid to play USC.
Yeah.
And maybe that ought to be, resurrected.
And And Montez as well was feeling the pressure. He was definitely a different quarterback. We talked about it earlier, how he ran out of bounds when he could have thrown the ball away on a sack. But you could tell that he was starting to get happy feet, and he was looking at the rush. His eyes dropped to see the rush because they were in front of his face all night long, and he was getting beat up. Even when he was getting the ball away, he was still taking some hits as well. So he was a different quarterback. Early versus later in the game. I know he started out like his numbers were still really good as far as completion percentage and stuff. Now, granted, those were all like -2 to 4 yard gains. There was a lot of passes that were completed for -1 yards and stuff. But
that's why he had 16 tackles for loss. A bunch of them were passes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the difference in athleticism. In their previous 5 games, they'd complete those little passes, and they were athletic enough to beat somebody in the flat. They got that ball to somebody in the flat, and they couldn't beat. Chenault couldn't beat John Houston, for example, when they got matched up out in the flat. I mean, USC's kids were running with whoever caught the ball for Colorado was not running away from anybody. And that's where, if USC plays up to its athleticism on both sides of the ball, they're in pretty good shape. But,
Montez was still completing passes early. His percentage was still good. He ends the game 55% though, which is 20% underneath what he came into the game. Like Dan said, he was number 1 in the nation coming in completion percentage. Now, granted, 40% of his throws, according to the broadcast, 40% of his throws were behind the line of scrimmage coming into the game, and that was continued. But by the end of the game, he was not able to complete those passes, and they started forcing them to try to go downfield a little more. Ryan was looking for that earlier in the game. They started trying to open that defense up, and even then, USC was still making plays down the field, even though they got a couple of penalties late.
I think the other thing you noticed is their wide receivers couldn't really beat anybody deep. They couldn't beat anybody. I mean, they weren't, creating any space at all. And the deal with Chenault is when you see him in person, he basically, that's a long handoff that they like to get to Chenault, let him make some moves and all that. But he's not as much of a down. I mean, he's pretty good down the field, but that's not what they do with him. So they didn't have, and then when McIntyre goes out, they just didn't have anybody even, medium to long range that could run away from any USC defender.
Yeah, it's pretty much 3 starting wide receivers were out for Colorado by the end. Brandon wrote in, I'm sorry, there's so many comments and stuff on Facebook, I apologize. Brandon, hey Dan, can I get a signed copy of your book?
Yes.
Dan, you have to sign mine. You want to hold it up? That's down. It should be right there. So that's my book there. Dan hasn't signed mine yet, so we got to get
Absolutely. What I understand is they're at all the Barnes and Nobles in Southern California. They're on Amazon, trying to set up a book signing at the USC bookstore that coincides with one of the remaining home games, and maybe try to set up something over at a home game over at the Coliseum before the game. So stay tuned for a book signing here.
Chris wrote it. So one of the topics we wanted to bring up too was obviously replacing Porter Gustin. Chris wondered if Porter could use a redshirt year for the injuries and come back as a 5th-year senior. And I think, Shotgun, you brought this up. If the current redshirting rules were in place last year, he only played in 4 games. I don't think that's some sort of retroactive thing, but I don't think he would do it anyway. But yeah,
USC can try to appeal it, and the NCAA takes each of those as an individual case, and maybe if for some reason the NCAA is feeling generous, that could happen. Not likely going to happen, but it is something. It's actually something that after the injury, Porter Gustin was discussing. From a source I talked to, that was something that he asked about to see if there's a possibility. And the reason why is because Porter could go to the NFL right now, but he feels like he has not accomplished as much as he set out to accomplish at USC, which tells you everything you need to know about the kid and how tough he's been throughout his career. He's got this now, has this label as he's injured all the time, but it's only been these last 2 years. His first 2 years he was not injured, besides maybe like a broken knuckle or something, which is not something that will ever stop him from doing anything. He'll just wrap that thing up. He'll be ready to go. But he played 800 snaps as a sophomore. He's a guy that was completely durable during that. And then he ran into the foot injury is what really has set him back. Last year, it caused him to miss some time. He came back way too early on that, and then he missed a huge chunk of time because of it. And it re-aggravated when he came back in the Arizona State game. And I think that's probably even had lingering effects to the injury he had this year with the ankle, because I just don't feel that foot it never will be the same. when you have to insert screws and plates and stuff into your foot's never going to be the same. So maybe you run just a little bit differently. Maybe something's a little bit different. So I think that's had an impact there. But that might be something that they explore, but the realistic chances of it are not very good. Now, because of the new redshirt rules, maybe there's a super slim chance that the NCAA feels generous and says, yeah, that would have been a red shirt last year or this year. So, yeah, we'll grant it to you because you've been hurt the last 2 years. But I doubt it.
My suggestion would be, I don't care what Porter says, this is where the adults step in and say, no, you're going to the NFL next year. If you get hurt, you're going to get paid for getting hurt. I just think the downside is way too great when you're, his age and his history. And I mean, I do think you would like to see him get, in the hands of somebody who can figure out some things about those feet. I mean, one of the problems with the guys who really are good at building themselves up, and Porter's done all the other things. He's worked on his flexibility as much as his weightlifting and his strength. And so he's done everything you could possibly do. I mean, the guy still can throw a football and look like he's one of the quarterbacks. I mean, he's got this great arm. He could, throw a baseball at 93 plus when he was in high school. So he's tried to do all that. But one of the problems is there's not much you can do to build up your feet, for example. I mean, if you're one of this super strong guys, you end up at times injuring yourself just because you have so much force and so much power. And so you'd like to see him work on that. But I as much as you'd love to have him back, you got to go. You just have to go. And that's where USC needs to tell him, you got to go.
Well, I want to talk about replacing him too. And, I think 6 or 7 different names have come up. I talked to Christian Rector yesterday after practice, and, it seems like it's going to depend on what sort of front. I think, we've seen Palier, now Giote do it when they were in like 3-3-5, I think, or whatever. But when they're doing their like kind of 3-4, their base stuff, even in the nickel, I think a guy like Christian Rector would just play that predator spot and take over there. But they mentioned a lot of names. Hunter Echols comes up. It seems like those 3 are probably the most likely. But what do you guys think? I don't know if you want to go.
Yeah, I think some of it. I was just saying yesterday, talking to everybody, they're throwing out names. I mean, you talk to Clancy, and he's throwing Jacob Lichtenstein in there, and Clay. They all have.
He's playing right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He's not playing that position.
No. But Clancy mentioned him for that. So I just think some of it is a smokescreen. I mean, I think they kind of know what they're going to do. They've got a couple of different packages and they're hoping they can force Utah into situations where it's 3rd and long, where they obviously have to pass it, and then they could, put in a pass rush, package and get Hunter Echols on the field. But with an option quarterback who's going to run the ball, I think they know what they're going to do, and I don't think it's going to include 6 guys, but I think every once in a while, they can get a Kanai Moga on the field, or Jordan Iosefa can flip out there a little bit, and I mean they do have a lot of names, and I don't think they want to tell Utah this is what we're going to do. I mean, so I thought they were almost purposely throwing as many names out as they possibly could yesterday.
So this is what they're actually going to do, is what they're probably going to do is put Kanai Monga in and Jordan Iosefa, in this game at least, because you're placing an option quarterback. They don't like Christian Rector on the edge versus an option quarterback. They've shown that in other games. So Rector is a possibility to replace Porter Gustin, but Hunter Echols has actually been the guy when Porter Gustin comes off the field, at least this last game, that came in for him. So now there's very few times that Porter Gustin came off the field in this game, but when he did, it was a combination of Hunter Echols and Christian Rector, and that's kind of based on where they are down and distance wise. Now, when they got to pass rush situations, they used Hunter Echols, Porter, Jacob Lichtenstein, and Christian Rector. That was the pass rush grouping that they used. So that'll change a little bit. You'll see Lichtenstein probably still in there. You'll see pretty much those same guys. They'll have to probably put Mauga in there in place of Gustin in that spot. But against an option quarterback, I think that they will probably trust Iosefa and Malga in that to be able to kind of do the read and react type of thing rather than Eccles or Rector, who are more pass rushers than outside linebackers. So I think that's what you'll see this game, and they don't kind of vary each game based on production. I think that Malga actually was getting opportunities this game. He was subbing in for Jordan Iosefa. This is the first game that he's done that, as an actual just sub in their packages. But I think so they're getting more trust in him. Obviously, they've gotten more trust in Hunter Eccles the last few weeks with him being in on certain packages and him also subbing in this past week for Porter at times. So I think those two guys are gaining more trust and going to move their way up. And they just got to figure out what to do with Rector because he's a versatile guy. But sometimes that versatility hinders him because he's not great against certain things. So they want him in certain situations, but not other ones. So I think that, for the first 3 quarters last game, he played 26 snaps. He played 25 in the fourth quarter because they knew that Colorado was going to pass. So when they get in pass rush situations, they definitely want him on the field. But before that, how much do they want him on the field is the question.
Yeah, and I mean, this is not a team that's proven itself against running quarterbacks. The UNLV kid torched them. Texas ran their guy. It's not even an option. I mean, they just like a 1940s single wing quarterback run. But they've got to figure out, this has not been something through the years, through a lot of different coaches that USC's handled all that, terribly well is the quarterback run. I mean, we can still have nightmares of the game at Boston College where they changed to a little bit different option look and the guy gained like 900 yards in the second half. So for USC fans, this will be something that, to be watching and say, do they have this figured out? I mean, last week they had Colorado figured out. Now do they have Utah figured out? I think we're gonna see, and I think it's gonna be a lot of different ways of approaching it, and they've got some athletes. I mean, they athletically they ought to be able to match up.
So Huntley is a option quarterback that can run the ball really well, but I don't think he's a very good passer, especially if you put pressure in his face. He's a completely different quarterback when there's pressure in his face. Now, if he escapes the pocket, he's creative. But you put pressure in his face, and he'll throw it right to the other team. He did that against Arizona. Someone's coming at him. He tries to get out of the pocket. He can't. He just throws it up. Like, those are the type of things in USC, if they get pressure. But that's the thing. Without Porter Gustin, they haven't consistently got pressure. He's been the guy that's changed everything for them. And, there's stunts, and you see, Liam Jimmons got a sack. Well, that's because 3 guys went to try to block Porter Gustin on that play, and that's why he was able to come scot-free. Without him, are there any double teams on that offensive line? No, they're playing single up. Can you beat your guy one-on-one? That's something that the rest of the guys have not done. Christian Rector's done it some, but he has 0 sacks on the season. Because he's probably missed 5 sacks by running, getting his hands on the quarterback but not being able to pull him down. Maybe even more than that. So it's going to be up to him to produce more, I think, Christian Rector, when he has an opportunity. He's got to get the quarterback on the ground. But also the younger guys have to take that next step, and this is their big opportunity. And if they can get pressure in Huntley's face, it'll be a much different game than if they give him all the time in the world.
I think one of the other things you'd like to see, and back in the day, you used to, see teams basically play the quarterback man-to-man. If he was that much of a threat, you didn't care what else he did. You had somebody who was going to take the quarterback. And it doesn't matter. He had to be athletic enough to be able to run by, any blockers. But that was your responsibility. Make him give the ball up. Make him pitch it. Make him do something that he don't want to do. I do think maybe there is an athletic mismatch a little bit. Utah's got some really big, offensive linemen. I think USC does have the possibility of running people past them. They did last week. They've got to do it this week. But I do think they've got to get it really clear as to what are the responsibilities with Hundley and who's going to do that, and not get caught up in the middle where a guy's trying to play 2 people and they take advantage of that. USC's got to get those rules down very clearly.
We got a question from George, I guess for you, Shotgun. Shotgun, do you have any stats on USC's performance on low snaps versus good snaps? I can't believe how long this has been allowed to be an issue. So we can talk about the center spot a little bit here now.
We have not actually tracked that. Keeley had, because of how Keeley shoots the game, and she zoomed in on the quarterback. She was going to look at this, but unfortunately, she's been sick, so she has not been able to put in the work on that. But that was something we're going to look at. I saw times where JT Daniels was almost on a knee, squatted down. Like he has his hands this way, like he's going to alligator clasp it, but he's almost on a knee because he's squatting down, just trying to make as big of a target as he can for Toa Lobendon, and them coming up to hand the ball off or whatever it may be. So I see that there's some adjustments there. You don't see any high snaps. That's the best thing. You don't see anything on the ground, but there's a lot of things between the ankles and mid-thigh, which you wouldn't prefer to be, move that zone up, and that's unfortunately not been able to happen.
They have snapped the ball better in practice this week, for whatever that's worth. And they're also not, as Clay said, he thought there were only 3 or 4 low, slow snaps in the Colorado game. I think a lot of people would beg to differ on that, characterization. But I think earlier in the year, JT tried to keep his eyes downfield and still get the low snap. And I think he figured out after a couple of them went.
You gotta get the snap first.
So now he does go get the snap. The problem is, both by moving his upper body and the fact that he's got to, keep his eyes on the ball. I mean, it's like baseball. You keep your eye on the ball until you get it. But then you take your eyes off of reading the defense, immediate reaction to whatever you're doing offensively. And that's one of the things I think JT does so well is see the field when he has the opportunity to see the field and make a quick decision. So, we'll see. I know, Clay talked about, we won it between the belt and the numbers. And, you watch a lot of other teams and you don't see, the same issue. I think it matters a lot, but it would be good to have some statistics about how, for example, I think it makes it really difficult for JT to throw that quick slant that he throws so well over the middle. If you're coming up from being down, you've taken your eyes off the immediate reaction, and I don't think he's throwing that pass as much as he used to, and I think that's probably a factor in it because that's something he does really well, and you don't want to be moving and trying to reorient your eyes and throwing that pass all at the same time. I mean, that's asking for trouble. So, but if you don't have to bend your body down, you don't have to relocate where everybody is, you can throw that thing right away, catch it and throw it. So they've got to get that right. Look better this week so far.
Yeah, we had, George said, per Dan's practice reports, the manager snapped really well in practice. Hey, if you're on Facebook, give us, I forget to mention, give us some likes on this. Like, I want to see some likes popping up there. Tester Troy, so USC got a decommitment this morning too. We're not really going to talk a lot of recruiting, but I don't know if Shotgun real quick on Chris Steele decommitted. He was committed to UCLA before, now he's committed. Then he had a video committed to USC. Now he's decommitted. He's someone that likes the recruiting process, right? Yeah,
I mean he likes the attention and everything, and I think that with a guy like him, you have to recruit him until the very end, until he signs that letter of intent. So, maybe USC's still in this. I haven't really checked in to see his status and everything, or maybe he's wanting to go out of state now. I'm not sure. I know Florida has been on him pretty high throughout the entire process, and that's why they've continued to recruit him, because he is a guy, anytime that someone decommits once, then there's a possibility they'll decommit a second time. So you keep recruiting them just in case. So Brandon Jones asked, what's up with the decommitment? Do you think it's the first of many? If we start losing other commitments, does Clay Helton's seat get hotter? I don't know how much Lynn Swan's paying attention to recruiting until after signing day and he sees where the class ranks or something. I don't think he's paying attention to it up to that. So I don't think that's going to have a big impact. Do you think it's the first of many? No, I think most of the recruits they have are pretty solid. There's a couple of fringe guys that maybe
Chris Steele was a big recruiter though. Without that's one of the issues is he was one of the most active recruiters, so that's where he'll probably get hurt the most.
And Chris Trevino just talked to him on Tuesday, actually, so I think he wrote something earlier today. I haven't got the check on online. That all happened while I was driving, I believe, so you can check online on uscfootball.com, but Chris Trevino actually talked to him earlier this week, so you'll have the very latest up to date and before today's decommitment.
I do think in terms of Lynn Swan and paying attention to recruiting, I do think the extension of coaches' contracts last year probably played into recruiting a little bit. I think that was in how many of those
Yeah.
years are guaranteed and all that. I do think that can be a factor, so for whatever that's worth going forward, I don't know.
We probably got like 5 or so minutes left. Shotgun, is there any YouTube questions we want to?
Yeah, we got plenty of YouTube questions.
All right. Sorry
First,
we didn't do as many questions today. It's just been kind of a crazy.
plus, first is EA going to start? I think right now, if you're hedging your bets, I think you would put it on EA starting over
Yeah.
Cam Smith. I think he looks to be closer than Cam Smith. Like I said, Clay Helton said today's going to be a pivotal day, which tells you they don't know about either one of those guys yet.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think they know about EA. I do. I don't think you have him all week on kickoff team if you don't think he's coming back. I mean, he just, you've seen a lot of concussed guys, and I know the protocol is probably a lot more strict and a lot more involved than it was, but he certainly doesn't look like the kind of guy that probably is going to be limited. Cam does. Cam's not ready to play. As of yesterday, Cam wasn't ready to play. So if you had to bet, you'd give EA more of the chance right now, I think.
My guess is I'm just guessing. I think Cam doesn't play this game, and probably EA starts at middle linebacker. But who knows? We'll see what happens.
that's because Ryan's got a prediction.
So Chris Trevino does these 5 predictions I wanted to get in on a little bit. And one of them I just kind of came up with this randomly. Dan, I don't know if I've told you. So all of the freshmen on defense will have more tackles than all of the seniors on defense. So, and that's basically, if Cam Smith starts, I lose.
That ties into your Cam Smith.
Right.
I mean, and what does it tell you about how they do things? Cam leads them in tackles 6 straight games going back to last year. He's not there. The 2 guys they put in, EA and Ruben Peters have 15 between them. I mean, it's like
it's the position maybe. I don't know.
and in some ways it's a position. Although with EA, it's his position. I mean, he was in the backfield in places. You'd see where they started. Where he started on a play. And then you'd see him cutting somebody down in the backfield, and you think, how did he get from here to there?
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not. He's not a guy that you're necessarily going to diagram what he does on defense. He just does it.
Yeah, Clancy Pendergast said that what stood out to him was his ability to diagnose. He's super quick to read the offensive lineman and the running back to see where he should go with the ball. There were several times where he was just unblocked because maybe he wasn't. So there wasn't a guy intended to block him because he's coming from a backside or something, or it's somebody's supposed to get him down the field, but he's cutting across super quick. He does really nice with that. People have asked about the name. His name is Palaie Naitiote. The last syllable of Palaie is EA, and it's spelled IE. It's apostrophe IE if you actually wanted to write it out. So it is pronounced EA. That's for everyone.
So people say they write down IE, but it's EA is what you know.
Technically, it's apostrophe.
I think he gave
IE.
Keely a pronunciation guide when she interviewed him after the game, and then he gave me one when I was in Hawaii for the Polynesian Bowl interviewing him. So I think that's when I got it down, the Naote thing. So,
Yeah, so there you go, guys. A couple more questions.
Sure.
Why not use the fullback more to establish the run game?
What fullback?
Yeah, there's not one. Your fullback had how many tackles last game?
6
He's playing defense.
Yeah, he had 6 tackles as the third string running back.
I think the last
linebacker.
fullback they had, Sark was coaching.
Stanley Havili.
They convinced Ruben to play fullback that one year, and then he realized.
Well, he was fullback last year still.
I just wasted a year, and then last year he was transitioning, I think.
What about hiring Rich Rod as an offense coordinator? No. Arizona just hired Hugh Freeze as offense coordinator. Why doesn't SC think they need a change? Now, do they need a change? That might be more of a question than Rich Rod.
Hiring, firing.
Yeah.
It's more
That's
about
why I'm going through them really
stuff.
quickly. If SC loses this game plus Notre Dame, UCLA, do you think Coach Helton could survive as head coach? Why don't we wait and see if that actually happens before we decide if that's going to happen? Do you
It's
see?
a really important game, so I think you should focus on that.
Yeah. USC has depth. What's wrong with the coaching staff? They're using some of the depth, at least on the defensive side. And when they go to the depth on the offense side, is kind of inexplicable when they do it. Don't go. And the 3 and outs, the back-to-back 3 and outs, they passed 4 times on those back-to-back 3 and outs. So if you were just going to put Randall Grimes and Devin Williams in there to run the ball, and maybe I could see that, but maybe that's going to give it away. They passed it 4 times.
I mean, they do not need any sort of offensive depth. They ran 61 plays last game. I mean,
Right.
come on. I mean, they went 61 plays. Come on. I mean, that's
84 plays on defense. They rotate a
That's
lot of guys. That's great.
inexplicable. Yeah,
you don't need
that-
61 plays. You don't need to rotate.
I mean,
anybody.
Colorado averaged 3.2 yards per play and got 84 plays. That's impossible. I mean, you have to give them, you have to basically commit penalties that keeps their drives going, and you have to give up third and longs when you have no business doing so. Other than that, I mean, it's almost impossible to imagine Colorado got 84 plays last week.
Colorado had 31 plays in the fourth quarter. USC had 61 plays in the game.
Yeah. Tester Troy and a bunch of other people, shotgun real quick, are asking, and both of you guys, Stephen Carr's health. Where do you guys think it is? I mean, it seems like he's okay, but some people are like, well, he's not, blowing you away.
He won't give you an inch in terms of that there's any problem. I mean, he won't, say when he gets caught from behind or, in terms of the back, nothing. I mean, he just flat out, he does look different. I mean, they're not targeting him at all in terms of, the passing game, which is, they targeted him for some of the biggest plays, like, the Texas game where they throw the ball to him, out of the backfield. They aren't doing any of that this year.
We get a lot of questions about like where are the wheel routes, and you're not seeing much of that.
And is it a health issue or not? I mean, all their backs can catch the ball, so why that's just gone away? So what you could say, well, is that about Stephen Carr? Or is that just about they've just gone away from doing that with JT? I don't know.
It's funny, our friends over at Rain Troy, I was listening to them, and they said they're convinced it's all Tyson Helton. Like, Tyson Helton's gone, that maybe that's where the screen game went. But I don't know if you guys...
Whoa, they've tried to run screens. They're just god-awful at it. They get linemen out in front. They'll have 4 linemen to block 3 guys, and they won't block maybe one of them. Then they'll throw the ball on the ground because the guy's covered up. They don't block. Like the last game, they had a screen on a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 play to Vi Malapai. They had 4 blockers out in front. Could be a good play, but left tackle Austin Jackson didn't go block the guy that was standing right with Vi on the play. So I don't know if he expected him to juke him before catching the ball or what, but like there was a defender standing right there. If he blocks that guy, that play is a first down for 1 and might be a really big play because they had 3 blockers out in front. It was a good play call at the time. Just you got to go block guys, and they don't do that in the screen game at all. So why call it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you can call it a good play call because, for example, here's the difference. When Pete Carroll was here, and we fall back on this a lot, but he believed in and talked about Malcolm Gladwell's, the principle, the rule of 10,000, where you have to do something 10,000 times, and you perfect it, you own it, you've got it forever. And the rule at USC right now is the rule of 1, maybe. Maybe we'll do it once. And if we do it right or wrong in practice, we're just going to go to the next play. And how many times have we seen a screen in practice run properly?
It seems like there's not been. I thought last year they did a lot more of that. So maybe it's with that coach being gone with the passing game coordinator. I don't know. I mean, but it seems like there's less of it. I mean, I think you're right, Shotgun. Though they're not executing it well, and so maybe they're not calling it as much. But there seems to be more of a dedication to it. And when you got a guy like Carr, I mean, all 3 of the running backs can catch the ball out of the backfield. Swing passes, something like that. I don't know. We're not seeing much of it. Is it a combination of things? It's just hard to say. But they probably could be more effective using it more.
I mean, back in the day, I was sports information director at Xavier and had been a high school football coach not too much before that. And we were in a basketball tournament at Brigham Young. And this was in the very early Lavelle Edwards days. And I go out, and it's in December, and they're getting ready for a bowl game. And I hadn't seen Brigham Young play much at all. So I go out and watch them practice a couple of days, and I figured it out. I said, wait a minute. They've got a bunch of kind of slow-footed offensive linemen, and they got big, Caucasian tailbacks. And what did they do? They decided they'd keep throwing. They would be long handoffs. All of the stuff that Colorado ran, those are long handoffs. And people used that who couldn't really block you in the run game. They didn't have the athletes to block you in the run game. So Brigham Young was probably the first team that figured out how to do that. And with USC now, without the offensive line that can really get out and get after people, one of the ways you can still kind of run the ball is throwing the ball to your tailbacks. And that they don't even try to do that is pretty inexplicable. I just think because they've got guys who can beat people, out in the flat. If you get one of the USC tailbacks, out there with a linebacker or a defensive end, they're going to beat him. But they don't just seem to go there.
You see them practice screens and stuff against scout team, but I remember. I have photos of like Damian Mama doing the bags where he's diving at the bags. They make good photos for us, the offensive linemen, because it's a screen. They're getting out in front. They're going to dive and cut a guy out in space. You don't see that in their normal warm up. Now maybe that's something they do before we get in there. Who knows? But you don't see it. You see it when they do scout team, and that's the only time. And scout team's going to go, okay, we'll let you catch it, and you can run it. Like, there was one yesterday. There was a scout team, a cornerback, could have come off, and, he could have blown up a play, but no, they catch it, and he runs, and Vi runs everything to the end zone, so he runs 60 yards for a hypothetical touchdown when the guy probably would have blown the play up because no one blocked the cornerback.
I will say they're getting a little better on the scout team, and they're not just like scarecrows, where they're just in their arms out and you just run by them, but it isn't comparable to doing it against really good athletes who are trying to stop you from doing it.
And they're not doing it against the bags or anything this year. That was something they did previously, and we haven't really seen that as far as the screen game. Those plays are there. They're there if they would just get out and block them. Their offensive linemen have not shown that they can do that.
Well, especially as much of a drop-back quarterback as JT is, and a threat to throw the ball down the field. I think those are absolutely ought to be counters to whatever people are trying to do to get to JT.
Richard wants to know, what's your view on Chuma Edoga, number 70? We know his number, Richard, thank you. But and his play, he gets called for 2 penalties, and he's laughing. I saw people on the Peristyle mention that, too. I didn't notice that on the rewatch.
I think you're interpreting way too much. We're all not psychologists or psychiatrists, and I think one of them you could be laughing at yourself like, what a stupid play that all I had to do was stand there and the guy's blocked, and I decided to twist him around and throw him into the ground just to see if I could do it. I guess
that was a WWE move, I thought.
Yeah, that was like it was a nice it was a nice flip. But again, all you had to do, that guy was out of the play. You just had to stand there, and you just gratuitously grab him and throw him. You might have even been able to get away with grabbing him, but you can't grab him, turn him around, and throw him down. It's like, these guys. I thought that play, I don't even think the official wanted to call that because the play was so obviously there. He didn't even want to really have to call it, but he knows what it's going to look like on television and on film if he doesn't call it. So, you just can't do things that you don't even need to do it to block that play. You just had to stand there. He had the edge. He had the angle on, had the guy inside. But I don't know. Chuma is Chuma. His own teammates try to figure out things that they can do to almost bribe him to do things, and they try to, they were last year, they were coming up with, incentives that they could offer Chuma to do this or to do that or whatever. He's kind of in his own world.
He's our second best rated lineman according to Pro Football Focus. He has 5 penalties on the season. He had his best run blocking grade this past week. He is graded out in the 80s 4 of the 6 games for pass blocking. He's really good as a pass blocker. USC actually has the, I think, 13th overall offensive line pass blocking efficiency. They're first in the Pac-12 at 92.9. They're really good pass blocking. It's the run blocking that's the issue. And that comes with attitude, like we talked about earlier. And Chuma, I don't think he has the right disposition to go and block guys all the time. But if you get him, he was a guy that would chirp at other teams when he gets mad. When he gets mad is when he's at his best. I don't know. Somebody should be telling him that his dog's dead or something on the sideline before every snap. Before every drive or something, just to fire him up, because when he is going hard, he's All-American status. When he's going hard, that's the problem. Is getting the consistency. He's not a consistent, and that's the problem with the entire offense. Is consistency. Getting flow to the offense, but just getting the consistent blocks, getting the consistent play calling together. That's been the issue. It's up and down, up and down.
And how do you get consistency? You practice it. It does have.
Do that,
the thing with Chuma, he's got really good feet, and he's got that boxer. He's got that bounce, and he's got that, and he can get angles on people. He can get to places, and he's just gonna. He's an athletic kid, but I think at times it probably comes too easy for Chuma because he is so athletic. Yeah, if you could, and they try. I think they really try to figure out ways. His teammates do to keep his head in the game. But Chuma is Chuma.
Well, I think we got to probably wrap things up here. We'll do a little, I mean, I know, Dan, you're not the big in the prediction things. We won't, put you on the spot or anything. It's, I think it might have been up to a 7.5 point spread. I know it was 6.5 before, somewhere around a touchdown or whatever. USC's going into Utah. I think all of us feel like if USC plays the potential, they can win the game easy, but that's just, what are they going to do? To me, this is a game that's more important to Utah than USC, because Utah needs to win this to have any chance. USC has a much easier schedule. They can lose this game and still back their way into a Pac-12 South title. I just get the feeling that Utah's going to take care of business, maybe like a 28 to 17 or something like that. It's just something, I don't know. I don't think we're going to see like a great effort on USC's part. I think Utah's going to win, but I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game. I don't know what you guys.
I think they're playing. I think USC's kind of serious about this. I think this is one of the few times you really hear them talking about looking forward to going to play at Rice Eccles. And as much, a rep as Rice Eccles has, it's still just 46,000 people. And if you do the job, they aren't going to make enough noise to take you out of the game. I do think the history of this series, though, makes you wonder what the heck's going to happen. The last two games in Salt Lake City, USC clearly outplayed Utah, and both of them they lost right at the end with goofy penalties. The Adoree Jackson 100-yard fumble return that was called dead, and USC giving the quarterback from wherever he was
Narbonne.
No, the other before that, the kid from Travis Wilson, from San Clemente, and he ends up running the thing in at the end. And then last year USC should have lost, and they win. So you've had three out of the last 4 years where the team that played better on the road lost. So I don't know, I don't know what that says about this series. But you're right, Utah needs the game big time, and their fans know that. And this is their season. But I do think USC's kids realize we get the job done here, we have taken over. We're going to put ourselves in the Pac-12 championship game. And I think that's a big deal for Clay. That is like Clay has made that his measuring stick. As much as, you hear talk about national this and that, Clay wants to be in that Pac-12 championship game. And I think they push him pretty hard this week, and I think the kids are responding. But are they ready to make all the plays with the consistency that they have to make, and are they going to make the right calls? I don't think we have any idea.
James says the game is extremely expensive, $63 for standing room only tickets there. Wow. So, the muss is going to be out in full effect. Can USC communicate on the offensive line? Can they get the calls right? And that's been issues when they played on the road, even when the crowd hasn't been terribly hostile. They've been that way. So it will be hostile, much more than Arizona. Probably not as much as Texas, obviously, but it'll be hostile in and of itself. So can USC deal with that? And if something goes bad, well, do we turtle up and realize that the game's over, or do you bounce back? And is there any fortitude in this team to know that, hey, we're more talented? It's okay. We threw a pick six or whatever it was. We gave up a touchdown on a special teams touchdown. How do we bounce back from that? Or is it Texas? Okay, they blocked a field goal. This game's done. This game is over. We could have, this would have made it a one-score game, but no, they scored. Now we're over. It's finished now, which is what this team has been so far this season.
Well, I do think this team has the benefit of having played some tough road games that nobody else has had to play. They've been in that situation. They know what not to do. They know if you get up 14-3, you don't take your foot off the gas and you don't, let the other team back in like they did at Texas. They've got enough examples of what not to do, and they've been there, and so they've been tested. Unlike, say, Colorado last week, hadn't been tested, had no ability to deal, with what hit them. USC has been, so that ought to stand them in some good stead Saturday. We'll see.
All right. Well, I think it's going to wrap it up. Thanks. So we had, if you turned in late, Keely's still on rehab island, so we had Dan Weber coming in off the bench. Dan, thanks for making the trip. He didn't find out about it until about like an hour before we were supposed to go live, so we had to drive all the way here, and so he was a little bit late if you're watching the replay and stuff. But thanks, Dan. Thank you, Shotgun. And I'm Ryan Abraham. Thanks all of you for tuning in to Tunnel Vision, part of USCFootball.com. We'll be back on Sunday night with another show. We'll all be back from Utah by then. We'll give you a recap of what went on. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.